Hey friends, welcome back to Nightmare Patrol. Ready for another chilling story? Grab your headphones and dive into the darkness. Let me know in the comments, where are you listening from? Let's see how far the fear spreads. Now, sit back, if you dare, and enjoy tonight's story. My radio came to life as the sound crackled through the speakers. Immediate assistance needed at the park on Grande Ave. Unidentified woman attacked and in critical condition. Grande Ave was only a few blocks away. I turned the car's ignition and grabbed the radio while pressing the side button. Copy that. I'm on my way now. Any information on the nature of the attack? Negative, came the distorted response. I backed the car onto the road and made the short drive to Grande Ave. Even from a distance, I could hear the wailing of other first responders rushing there as well. Whatever the problem was, it seemed big. After a few minutes, I arrived at the scene, and with a quick flash of my badge, I crossed the police tape. I walked past the ambulances and other emergency vehicles toward a group of people dressed in their matching uniforms, gathered around a single area. A police officer looked back and seemed to recognize me, probably from the academy, and stepped aside to let me get a look at what was causing the commotion. I whistled through my teeth. A woman lay on the ground. Well, the only way to know it was a woman was because I was told. The woman lying before me was so disfigured that it was impossible to tell what she really looked like. She was covered in thousands of toothpicks, each one deeply embedded into her skin. Streams of blood flowed from every incision, coating her entire body in red and pooling on the ground near her. And yet, she was alive. She was breathing, very obviously and painfully, every 2 seconds. A nearby paramedic informed me that wouldn't be the case for much longer. We can't move her. That would only push the toothpicks deeper into her skin, making the problem worse. We can't remove them either, he said solemnly. Why not? I asked. He looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear on his face. That's the thing. We can't. Every single toothpick has a sharp end, which means the only direction they move is downward, and we don't want that. We tried inserting a catheter to induce artificial respiration, but we couldn't get it in. He gestured wildly toward the woman. She has toothpicks in her nose. I stared at the woman for a while longer. I watched her chest rise as she struggled to breathe before it fell again, pushing the toothpicks deeper into her skin, increasing the already alarming blood flow. I looked at the paramedic, slowly coming to the realization that this person was going to die a slow and painful death, and there was nothing they could do about it. I had seen a lot of things in my career, but this took the cake. I used to pride myself on staying calm in any situation. I could remain stoic and take control of any scene. But this time was different. The brutality of the attack made my insides feel like a swirling mess, threatening to spill out of my mouth if I wasn't careful. Everything about it felt so wrong. The human body was not meant to be treated this way. There was an instinctive urge to run from it, coming from a deep-seated primal fear rooted in my brain. But I couldn't. Even though the situation filled me with so much fear of the unknown, I had to stay. After all, I had a job to do. I turned to the paramedic. How was she found? He sighed. Exactly as she is now. A passerby called emergency services. We've tried everything we can to help her. But he trailed off, his gaze drifting into the distance. Is there anything else I should know? I asked. He looked at me, but not directly. His eyes seemed foggy, as if staring at something far away without really comprehending what they were seeing. Sadness, I assumed. Yeah. There were a few items found next to the body, he finally said. He stepped away to retrieve them and returned with a small folded piece of paper in his hands and a small silver wristwatch, which he handed to me. The watch caught my attention. It looked familiar. Well, I suppose all silver chain watches with 3 faces look alike. But this one felt different somehow. The weight and feel of the metal against my palm triggered a long-forgotten memory in the back of my mind. I could see myself holding this watch years ago and slipping it onto my wrist, or someone else's. I turned the watch over. 2 simple letters were engraved on the back of the watch face. 2 simple letters that made the color drain from my face and made the world feel like it was collapsing around me. 2 letters that I had placed there 6 years ago. A.E. Alice Edwards. My sister. She had been declared missing over 3 years ago after going out for a late-night run and never coming back, leaving behind a grieving husband and a 4-year-old daughter. The search was eventually abandoned. There were no leads and no witnesses. How do you even begin to find someone who simply disappeared? With my mind clouded by questions, I turned back to the body. I forced myself to look past the blood and the toothpicks, past the sight of mutilated flesh. I looked at the eyes, the only part of the body that wasn't completely covered in toothpicks, and I collapsed into sobs. Because in that moment, I knew. The eyes were red and lifeless, but I had seen all I needed to see. The woman on the ground before me was my sister. I had thought she was dead, and now I watched her die. Without even knowing her true identity, I turned my gaze away from her and everyone else. Everything was too much to process, and I knew I had to leave the scene or risk breaking down completely. In that moment, the pain was too overwhelming, and the tears were too strong. I nodded to the officer standing by the tape and crossed it once more. As I walked away, I realized there was a folded piece of paper in my hands given to me by the paramedic, as it had also been found near the body. I opened it. What do you think of my little hedgehog? If you like this, don't worry. My zoo is just getting started. When you've been in the business as long as I have, it's inevitable that you'll come across some truly disturbing things. Trust me, I've seen it all. An unfaithful husband driving his wife to the brink, leading to a murder-suicide. Yes. A young woman pushed in front of a moving train by an obsessive stalker? Yes. My sister bleeding out after being pierced by thousands of toothpicks, earning her killer the fitting nickname, the human hedgehog? Yes. As you can probably guess, it's that last case I'm dealing with right now, trying to figure out how the hell the killer got away with it. Because if you really think about it, none of it makes sense. For starters, the toothpicks had to be inserted in a secondary location before she was transported and left to die in the park where she was found. All without a single witness. And then there's the issue of the toothpicks themselves. Paramedics on the scene found it impossible to move her without pushing the toothpicks deeper into her skin, increasing blood loss. How did the killer manage to do it? Well, I actually had an answer to that question, but it was one I didn't want to think about. The toothpicks were likely inserted one by one, over the course of several months, possibly years. Let the wound heal, then move on to the next toothpick. Which leads me to my final dilemma. Why? What did the killer gain from spending months of their time puncturing my sister's skin? Why was it my sister in the first place? I didn't know of any reason for it to be an act of revenge, so it could have just been a crime of opportunity. She just happened to be the victim, which made it hurt even more. It was definitely a shock to learn she was still alive after all these years, and seeing how she had been treated only added salt to the wound. I was grieving, yes, but the killer had mentioned that my sister was only the beginning, so solving this case became my top priority. I couldn't let it happen again. The real grieving would have to come later. And so, I sat in my office, sliding my sister's watch onto my wrist, pondering these facts with the first step to uncovering the killer's identity currently in my hands. One day after the murders, a birthday card containing an address was sent directly to me. Forensic analysis confirmed that the handwriting on it was a perfect match to the note left at the crime scene. As interesting as it was to receive a handwritten birthday card, it raised even more questions. How did the killer know I had taken the case? Were they at the crime scene that night? Maybe they knew it was my sister they had killed and were now targeting me. As always, nothing made sense. But still, an address was an address, and in my line of work you take notes like that very seriously. I examined the birthday card again, looking at the cartoon giraffe telling me to have a tall day. Yeah, birthday card puns are weird. I scanned the address inside once more, staring at the words 12 Baker St., as if they might hold some hidden meaning I had yet to uncover. Nothing came to mind. It seemed like an address, plain and simple. And so I coordinated with my supervisor to lead a team that night to Baker St., to see if we could find anything there. Secretly, I was hoping that this was just a wild goose chase, because I was terrified of what I might find if it wasn't. Later that night, I arrived at 12 Baker Street with 3 of the best men I knew. Thompson, a giant of a man, who I personally knew could keep his cool in any situation. Ramirez, not as physically imposing as Thompson, but he had the brains to make up for it. His quick thinking was known for saving many officers from danger. And Edison, an analyst both in the field and out, somehow always managing to keep an eye on every detail. I chose the best of the best to handle the worst of the worst. Baker Street itself was a row of warehouses in the industrial district on the city's outskirts. Each one was identical large, rectangular, made of red brick and mortar. Nearly half of them were still in operation, manufacturing various materials to be shipped worldwide, while the other half appeared abandoned. 12 Baker Street was one of the abandoned ones. It had the signature look of "there is nothing interesting here." Broken windows, piles of trash scattered around, bricks crumbling in odd spots, and doors slightly off their hinges. But this was the place. I clenched my jaw and signaled to the others as I slowly walked through the already open front door. It took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the dark interior, as I was against using a flashlight just yet. I could hear the unmistakable sound of water dripping from the ceiling into a hollow object nearby. The air was thick and musty, smelling mostly of damp cardboard and something more metallic. Blood. A strong scent that quickly invades your nostrils, leaving no room for anything else. I pressed forward, my team following close behind. Edison looked at me with a raised eyebrow and I nodded back at him. "This is the place," I silently told him. "Be ready for anything." We passed through another set of doors and stepped into a dimly lit room, illuminated by a single overhead light. And in the center of the room, bathed in its glow, was a person. And I say person very loosely. The average person has a neck that measures 4 to 6 inches from the shoulder to the chin. The person in front of me had a neck over 10 times that length. They were on their hands and feet, their neck sprouting from their shoulders like a vine curving downward. Their neck extended along the floor for about 5 feet before ending with a head attached to it. The person saw us and began to crawl slowly in our direction, dragging their massive head and neck along with them. They moaned mournfully as they moved, and I could see trails of blood slowly seeping from what looked like stitches spaced every 2 inches along their neck. As they crept forward, their blood dripped onto the floor, spreading in all directions, leaving a bright red trail wherever they went. The person moaned again, looking at us clearly in excruciating pain. "What the hell is that?" Ramirez said loudly behind me. I kept my eyes fixed on the person on him, as a closer inspection revealed. I don't know. Another animal-themed abomination, apparently. I stood firm and watched, unsure of what to do, as he raised his head and the rest of his body toward us. He made eye contact with me, moving his mouth as if speaking, but all that came out were more awful groans. I understood what he was trying to say anyway, his mouth opening and closing in a circular motion, forming a single-syllable word. Help. I took a step back, more out of fear than anything else. I knew that this thing couldn't necessarily do anything to hurt me, but deep in my mind, alarm bells were ringing. This is unnatural. People shouldn't look like this. You need to leave. Now. I could feel my team behind me tensing up and moving back, probably going through the same thought process as I was. The person kept crawling forward, extending the trail of blood behind them even further, their movements slower and more exhausted. Their very essence seemed to be dripping away, and it was obvious that I was witnessing the final moments of someone tortured to death, once again. A voice began to speak. It emanated from above us, broken and distorted, probably coming from some kind of PA system. It was calm and somewhat cheerful in the way it spoke, as if everything happening was just a normal occurrence. Welcome all visitors to the newest attraction of the human zoo, a beautiful giraffe created by slowly tearing pieces from its neck and replacing them with larger, more suitable chunks of human flesh. I shuddered. That didn't sound beautiful. A slow process, yes, but look at the final result. Isn't he stunning? No doubt much better than his original form, don't you agree, Jonathan? I looked up almost instinctively. That was my name. Anyway, I just wanted to thank you for volunteering to add such a fine subject to my collection. I know you're going to love the wonderful things I have in store for you. The voice stopped speaking and I became aware of two things at the same time. A loud, sharp sound of metal striking metal, which ended as quickly as it started, came from the right side, across the room. A gunshot. And to my left, Thompson's leg seemed to jerk backward, sending him crashing face first onto himself, blood spurting from an area just above his knee. A gunshot wound. I did the only thing anyone would do when faced with an invisible shooter in a room. I ducked and dove for cover. Fear is a primary motivator after all, and I was terrified. I found myself behind a stack of crates which, to the best of my estimation, was blocking the shooter's line of sight. I stayed still, chest heaving with adrenaline and fear, and assessed the situation. Thompson was lying on the ground, motionless. He must have hit his head when he fell. Edison was directly to my right, having chosen the same stack of crates to hide behind as me. Ramirez was missing, and we had an active shooter. Things weren't looking good. And then the hanging light went out. Nothing makes your heart race faster than the panic of being suddenly thrown into darkness. I heard footsteps in front of me, near where Thompson was lying. It could be Ramirez trying to help him, or the shooter trying to finish the job. I hoped it was Ramirez. I heard more footsteps, heavier, louder, more than one person. I thought about making a run for Thompson, grabbing him and getting out of there, but he was too heavy for that. I turned to Edison to see if he had any ideas on what to do when the light flickered back on. I looked around. The giraffeman was on the ground, motionless, dead or close to it. Ramirez was hunched over a crate on the other side of the room, dead or close to it. Thompson was gone. The shooter was gone. Edison helped me carry Ramirez back to our vehicle. He was covered in bruises from what looked like a fistfight, but he was still breathing, mostly. I couldn't say the same for the giraffeman, though. We swept the rest of the warehouse, but nothing showed up. Apparently, it had been cleaned of all evidence beforehand in preparation for our arrival, or it had never been used. It was hard to make sense of everything. I had lost Thompson and came back with a man who had a 25-foot-long neck. Thompson was out there looking like God knows what. Ramirez was in the hospital, badly beaten. Edison was shaken, understandably. I was scared. Everyone was scared. But it was the words spoken over that PA system that haunted me the most. The way they said the giraffeman's neck was made of much larger chunks of human flesh, as if they had more humans with them, and judging by the size of that neck, far more than just one. There were still people out there, besides Thompson. A lot more people. I should start by saying that I'm no longer a detective. After the events at the warehouse, I was called in to see my direct supervisor, Sergeant Langley. She was sitting behind a mahogany desk when I walked in, looking at some kind of file. She glanced up at me. "What the hell was that, Jonathan?" "We were unprepared, Mom," I replied. She stared at me from across the room. "We have a missing man and a severely injured victim. How unprepared were you? Did you take no precautions at all?" "With all due respect, you weren't there, Mom," I said, frustrated. "Nothing could have prepared me for what I saw down there. How would you expect anyone to perform at their best in the face of that?" She sighed and looked down at the file, her eyes scanning the words. "The higher-ups are asking me to let you go for now." "You can't seriously be," I started to say. She raised her palm. "Look, the media is all over this, for the sake of everyone, including you." She pointed a finger at me. "It's better if you stay out of it for now." I stared at her. She stared back and raised an eyebrow. I considered my options and, reluctantly, handed over my badge and gun. Langley smiled again. "Look, this will all blow over soon. Just get some rest, okay?" I didn't respond. I left her office. It was noon, and I had nothing to do but worry about everything that had happened. So I went home and slept. After all, I was exhausted from the past few days. I woke up to the sound of the doorbell ringing. I was half asleep, so I covered my head with a pillow, hoping whoever it was would go away. The doorbell rang again. I shifted in bed and checked my clock. 4 o'clock. I was more tired than I thought. The doorbell rang again. I got up slowly and walked to the door, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. I opened it to reveal a skinny, scruffy-haired teenager who looked about 18. He waved at me, smiling politely. "What do you want?" I asked, not so politely. Yeah, I'm supposed to take you somewhere. I mean, that is, if you want to go," he said. I looked at him, trying to figure out if he was serious or not. "And what's that supposed to mean?" He shrugged. "Not sure. Someone came up to me and offered me $500 to ask you to come with me. But you don't have to come if you don't want to. I was told to say the choice is yours." A look of recollection crossed his face. "Oh, right. I'm also supposed to give you this." He pulled a neatly folded piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. I opened it and read the scribbled words inside. "I heard you're unemployed. You should come join my zoo. We're always in need of more zookeepers." The kid looked at me from behind the paper. "So, what's it gonna be? You coming or not?" I stared at him, expressionless. What do I say? How does whoever wrote this note know I lost my job? It just happened. Either way, this is obviously a trap. The kid might even be in on it. The last time I followed one of these notes, I lost a man and nearly killed another. So what now? Should I go or stay? I looked back at the kid. "Yeah, I'm coming." The kid drove with that careful stiffness all first-year drivers seem to have. He drove for a while, slowly taking me out of the city and into the rural areas beyond. It took another 30 minutes of driving along long stretches of road, with the land growing quieter and more desolate, before he pulled onto a gravel path that seemed to be the entrance to a much larger farm. I looked at the sign as he pulled in. Winston Family Orchard. The gravel path split further ahead, and he took the right turn. It ended at what looked like a farmhouse. The lights inside were on, and I could hear the hum of machinery from the massive barn behind it. The kid pulled the car to a stop. "This is your stop." "Hope you have a great night, sir," he said cheerfully, giving me just enough time to step out before heading back down the road. I watched him until his headlights disappeared into the horizon, then climbed the steps onto the porch. I could hear voices inside the house talking, laughing. It sounded like any home at dinner time. Unsure of what else to do, I knocked on the door. The voices stopped. I heard the soft creak of someone walking barefoot on the wooden floor toward me. The door opened. A man stepped out from behind it, medium height, short hair, and a 3-day stubble starting to show. He looked at me with a distant gaze before smiling and motioning for me to come in. "I'm glad you came. Dinner's ready. Why don't you join us?" His voice was deep, melodic, and familiar. Too familiar. I know you," I said, more of an accusation than a statement. Memories of the night I found my sister flashed in my mind. The paramedic who handed me the note that started all of this. The paramedic who always seemed to be looking away. No, not just looking, searching. He tilted his head slightly. "Well, I'm glad to hear that. Makes introductions a little easier then. Come on, you look hungry, let's eat." I didn't move. "I'm not eating with you," I shouted at him. "You killed my sister." He looked at me inquisitively. No, I didn't. I'm just a keeper. You've got it all wrong." I don't give a damn what you have to say," I shot back. "Hey friend, let's calm down and talk this over during a meal. I'm serious. Come join us." And with that, he walked back down the hallway. He turned left, entering what I assumed was the dining room. I heard some muffled voices and chairs scraping. It sounded like people were leaving. I had two choices. I could go in and find out what was going on, or I could leave and forget about all of this. There was one problem, though. I would never be able to forget. The pain would never go away. The horrors of what I had seen could never be erased. I stepped inside. I walked into the room where I saw the paramedic go. Inside, There was a table set as if ready to feed a large family. A roasted lamb sat in the center, with a few cuts already carved out. Surrounding it were various side dishes and drinks. There was a man sitting at the head of the table, directly across from where I stood. It looked like everyone else had left. The man spoke. His voice was rich and pronounced. "Isn't it great that we can finally meet, Jonathan? I have so many things I'd like to tell you." "And who are you?" I asked. He chuckled. "All in due time." He gestured toward the table. "Come, sit. Eat whatever you like. I highly recommend the steamed asparagus, though." Bonnie really outdid herself. I remained standing. He seemed unfazed and continued talking. "Now I'd like to remind you that you came here of your own free will, and you're free to leave anytime you wish. We're not forcing you to stay, but it'd certainly enjoy your company." He leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms over his stomach. "Now, before I start rambling, is there anything you'd like to ask? Anything important you'd like to know?" It didn't take me long to think of a question. "Why did you do it? Why did you kill all those people?" He paused for a moment, seemingly disappointed. "Straight to the heavy questions, huh?" He sighed. "Look at the world around you. What do you see? All I see is death. You, of all people, should know that. People die all the time, hundreds per second, thousands per minute. So what does it matter if I take a few more lives? It's just a drop in the bucket of death." He stood up. "And when people die, it's useless. Everything they did means nothing in the void of eternity. But that's not all. As a species, we are inching closer to death every day. We can't make the right choices. Not always. So, on behalf of all of us, I am choosing." I shook my head in disbelief. "Choosing what? You're just torturing people to death. How is that supposed to fix anything? You still don't understand?" His voice rose. "I am saving us all. I am leading the evolution of our species. In due time, I will be revered across the world as the only person who saw what was right and had the courage to act." He turned to face me. "The first deaths were unfortunate, yes, but they have advanced the cause beyond anything you can imagine. I am so close to creating the perfect being, the savior of our species." He looked at me, pointing a finger in my direction. "And you will join me, become a guardian, and embrace the new world." I was silent for a moment. This guy is insane, I thought. Join him? Who the hell does he think he is? He'll escape the first chance I get. But there was still one question I needed to ask. Why me? Out of all the people you could have chosen, why me? He grinned widely and let out a low chuckle. All that intelligence, and yet you still haven't figured it out? I didn't choose you. Look at you trembling in a corner. There are so many more suitable candidates than you, he said with a hint of disdain. Now tell me, what makes you think I chose you? I don't know. The note's my sister. You seemed interested in me, I said. He laughed again. You really don't know, do you? Tell me, how often did your sister go out for midnight walks? I'm not sure. Never, I suppose. Then what was she doing that night? The question struck me as odd. I had never thought about what she was doing, only about what happened to her. I had never been able to figure it out. The only way it seemed possible for her to disappear was if she had allowed it to happen, but I had dismissed that idea early on. She wouldn't let herself be kidnapped, right? Right? The man arched an eyebrow at my silence. You deserve the truth. Everyone does. Some people like to hide their secrets behind shadows and dark corners, praying they never see the light of day. I am not one of them. I strive to be open and honest in everything I do. I long for a world without lies because there would be nothing to lie about. Everyone would be accepted. If you need proof, haven't I already told you my exact location twice? That's not fair. You shot at us the first time, I said. I didn't shoot at you. You just happened to be there. Look, I'll explain everything to you. But first, I need one thing from you. He picked up a mug and took a sip. Your loyalty. Tell me, Jonathan, will you join me? You're insane if you think I want to be a part of this, I said firmly. A smirk curled at the corner of his lips. What a shame. His eyes traveled over my body, seemingly taking in everything. Look at you, always slipping into situations you shouldn't be in. I think you'll make a great snake. I heard a noise behind me and turned just in time to see a metal bar being swung at my face. It struck my forehead with a loud crack, sending me flying backward onto the ground. Pain. That was the first thing I remembered when I woke up. Searing, burning pain, radiating through my entire body and culminating in my forehead. Pain. A throbbing sensation that pulsed through me with each oddly prominent beat of my heart, blurring my vision and deafening my ears. Pain. The metal floor was cold beneath me, drenched in sweat. My arms were restrained by some kind of shackles on either side, limiting my movement. I was trapped, with a killer. Panic surged through me. I slammed my arms against the restraints, desperately hoping to free myself. The pain in my arm flared up, likely causing a bruise. I screamed in agony, only to realize my mouth was gagged with a piece of cloth. Struggling will only make things worse, you know. A voice spoke behind me, the voice of the man from the dining table. Like I said before, you're free to leave whenever you want. But since you won't give me your loyalty, I'll have to settle for something else. He stepped into my line of sight, holding what looked like a saw. It'll be quick, but I have to warn you. I don't like using anesthetic. The body is meant to feel pain. It's natural. How else would it learn to heal? He walked to the other side of me and turned on a camera propped on a tripod facing me. The lights blinked, indicating it was recording. He returned to me, placing the teeth of the saw against my left arm just opposite the elbow. Now, snakes don't have arms, so I'll start with this. I struggled against the restraints again. Adrenaline pumped through my veins in fear, but I had no way to use it. Panic set in, and the human body's primary instinct is self-preservation, and I was doing everything I could to escape. Don't fight, Jonathan. It only makes it take longer. It'll be over soon. I promise, he said, his voice calm and steady. And with that, he pushed the saw down. My body screamed in pain as my vision darkened. I could feel the blood pouring from the incision in my arm. He kept sawing, pushing it back and forth, severing veins and arteries. I felt it hit the bone. He continued cutting. I could feel the vibrations of my humerus splitting in two. I lost consciousness for the second time that night. When I woke up, my gag was gone. So was my arm. The remaining stump was wrapped in a tourniquet and bandaged at the end. Everything still hurt, but much worse than before. Much, much worse. The man was still there, standing behind the camera. He looked pleased to see me awake. Had a nice nap? He walked over to where I was lying and took my remaining hand in his. Everyone deserves a choice. Free will is what defines us. So I'm giving you a choice. You can stand up and walk out of here right now and work for me, or you can have your other arm removed and your legs sewn together. It's entirely up to you. Work for a madman, or die at the hands of a madman. Self-preservation is stronger than dignity. I want to work for you, I said, struggling for breath. Excellent. Let's get you out of these restraints, shall we? He pulled a key from his pocket and quickly unlocked them. I tried to sit up and immediately collapsed back down, my head spinning. The man began walking away. Now, I'll start your induction. You're free to leave or explore the house whenever you like. If you're hungry, there are leftovers in the fridge. Like I said, we're not keeping you here. He turned and smiled at me. You're going to love this, Jonathan. Toodles. He left the room, walking up a set of stairs I hadn't noticed before. It took me a while to stand, waiting until the world stopped spinning beneath my feet. Walking felt strange without an arm. The weight was gone, and I felt lopsided and unbalanced. I looked around. It was some kind of basement, with various surgical tools scattered about. There were also recording devices placed around the room, some still on but most turned off. There was a door to my left and the stairs directly in front of me. A poster was stuck to the door with a single word: elephant. I opened the door. It was dimly lit inside. The air smelled of musk and human waste. In the corner, a small machine hummed softly, with several tubes connected to a large mound in the center. The door shut behind me. The mound moved. I took a step back in fear. My focus sharpened and the horrifying realization struck me. I was looking at a person. They were massive, covered in layers of fat rolling over their body. The person sluggishly turned to face me. Tubes from the machine connected to a mask over their mouth, pumping a thick gray liquid continuously. I had only seen something like this once before, during a case where I was hunting a killer hiding in an abandoned psychiatric hospital, a force-fed victim. And then I saw it, the recognition in their eyes. I saw Thompson, and in that moment, I knew I would return. For Thompson, for Alice. I had nothing left to lose and everything to gain. I had 3 things on my mind as I walked home. First, figuring out how to get back home. My best guess was that I was about a 30-minute drive from any kind of civilization. There was a small chance that a car would appear in the distance, but the odds of it going in the same direction as me were even slimmer. I mean, I could probably hotwire a car back at the farm, but I didn't want to go back there. Not yet. The second thing on my mind was the lack of shoes. The rocks were hard and sharp under my feet, scraping them until they bled with every painful step. I had opted to walk on the muddy but less painful grass beside the road, but I still wondered why. Of all the things the man at the table could have taken from me, he took my shoes. It was a pretty clear answer, though. Mind games. He hired someone to drop me in the middle of nowhere with no viable way back. He knew the first thing I would want to do was leave. So he took my shoes. He gave me 2 options, and he wanted the one that displeased him to hurt me even if it was in a small, petty way. Mind games. The last thing was that I had messed up. Badly. I had continuously played right into the hands of the man at the table. He had always been 2 steps ahead of me, and in hindsight, it was foolish of me to confront him. I guess I had visions of bravado and revenge, but all I had to show for it was 1 less arm and a dead friend. I can admit that I shouldn't have done it, but I can also change. 1 simple call to the police and I'd be rid of this nightmare. I had an address. I had a confession. I had evidence. And I had made my decision. I wasn't going to face this alone anymore. I pulled my phone out of my pocket and dialed 911. No signal. Great. I kept walking for another 20 minutes before I heard the roar of a car engine behind me. I turned around. A car was appearing on the horizon, coming from where I had been and heading in the direction I was going. Perfect. It was an old blue Chevy, creaking along the gravel road, kicking up a cloud of dust as it passed. I stuck out my thumb. At that moment, I probably didn't look like someone you'd want to pick up on the side of the road shoeless and missing an arm and all. But it didn't hurt to try. I hoped it was a kind farmer from around here, heading into the main town for weekly groceries. The Chevy pulled closer, and I saw the driver look me up and down before pulling over to the side of the road. I opened the door and jumped into the passenger seat, thanking the driver. He shifted to look at me. Well, more like look past me. He had short, trimmed hair, 3-day stubble, and a distant look in his eyes, like he couldn't focus or was always searching for something in the distance. It was the paramedic from earlier. I opened the door and got out. I wasn't doing this again. I'd rather walk home. The paramedic drove forward a little, blocking me from the road so I'd have to go around his car to keep going. I stopped walking. The paramedic stepped out of the car. "Hey, Jonathan," he said, waving. I didn't respond. He stepped closer and extended his hand. I didn't take it. He held it there for an uncomfortably long time before finally putting it back at his side. "Look, we got off on the wrong foot here. My name's Michael. It's nice to see you again." "The pleasure is all mine," I said, dripping with sarcasm. He looked ahead, his gaze shifting in and out of focus. "So? You tried calling 911. I can't let you do that." "How do you know that?" I asked. He shrugged. "GPS tracker. In your arm. It shows our location and also interferes with phone signals. I took the liberty of inserting it while you were unconscious. So it wasn't a service issue." He shifted his stance and leaned against the car. So, let me make this clear. Come back with us. Obviously, you can't be trusted not to go to the police. Let's be fair here. We're not here to hurt you. You said you'd work for us. Come back, Jonathan. And how would you stop me from leaving? I said, bracing for a fight. He shook his head, looking hurt. He pulled his keys from his pocket and pressed a button on the keychain. I collapsed in pain as a strong buzzing sensation shook my body, the intensity increasing every few seconds. Michael released the button. I forgot to mention, the tracker also works as a safety precaution. You just experienced setting 3. Trust me, you wouldn't like setting 8. He tapped his eyes. Messes with your internal hardware, as you've probably noticed. Setting 10 kills you instantly. I automatically looked at my right arm. Somewhere inside it was a tiny death machine. So, Jonathan, are you coming back? I didn't have much of a choice. The ride back was quiet and spent mostly in silence. Every time Michael tried to start a conversation, I shut it down with one-word answers. I wanted to make it clear that I didn't want to be here. He pulled into the small driveway leading to the farm. The man at the table was sitting on the porch waiting for me. He knew I was coming. He tells me I have a choice about whether I leave or not, but I never really did. The illusion of choice. Mind games. He stood up to greet me as I stepped out of the car. Jonathan, you're back. I'm so happy to see you. He motioned for me to come inside. Come on in. I have so much to tell you. The others are having breakfast. I followed him inside, into the dining room where I had first met him. Sitting at the table was a large group of 19 people, eating bacon, eggs, and other breakfast items. I knew most of them. There was Sergeant Langley spreading butter on her toast. She smiled and waved at me as I walked in. Edison was sitting next to her, pouring milk into a glass. He turned away from me, refusing to meet my eyes. I guess he was ashamed to be here. There were several other people I had seen in my time in the field. Other paramedics and cops, politicians, journalists, doctors, and surgeons, all sharing a nice meal together. In a killer's house. The man clapped his hands behind me. Okay, everyone, let's make Jonathan feel welcome here. He's the newest guardian, but we're still expecting many more. Welcome, Jonathan, a chorus of voices said. I scanned the room, my throat dry and tight. This was too much. The man stepped away and motioned for me to follow him. He continued walking through the house, pointing out each room and describing the layout. A kitchen, 2 living rooms, and 3 bathrooms spread across 2 floors. There were also a few bedrooms inside, but it seemed like most people were sleeping in tents outside. Then he led me to the basement. This is where the magic happens, he said with a wink. It was just as I had left it. A large operating table covered in dried blood filled the center of the room. It was surrounded by various machines and tools. A stark contrast between a sterile IV drip on one side and a rusted saw hanging from a nail on the other. And in the middle of it all were cameras mounted on tripods around the room. I inspected one more closely. What are the cameras for? I asked. The man chuckled lightly. How do you think I afford all of this? I turned to face him, the gears turning in my head. You sell videos of people being tortured. He smiled. You got it. Torture pornography is extremely popular in some corners of the internet. That's not the main reason I do this, of course, but it helps the cause. The video of your arm being cut off, for example, sold for just under $5,000. He clasped his hands behind his back, seemingly very pleased with himself. I got money for cutting off some legs, and then I have money to cut off more than just legs. It's an endless cycle. It's perfect. You've seen firsthand the fruits of this system. He gestured to the door beside him, still marked with an elephant. He continued, That's where I keep my works in progress. Of course, it's empty now, which is a shame. He was becoming my best elephant yet. No matter, we have a cat chosen and arriving soon. I shuddered at the way he spoke about Thompson with such cold indifference, as if what had happened to him was just a natural, everyday event. It made me sick. There was no way someone could do this all day and still consider themselves a good person. Something else burned in the back of my mind. You said earlier that on the night my sister was kidnapped, she was doing something I didn't know about. What was it? He was silent for a moment. How close were you to your sister? I shrugged. Close enough. We talked once a month and saw each other every Christmas. Do you know what she did for work? Yeah. She was studying something, some kind of advanced anesthetic. She never figured it out, though. She did, he simply said. He waited for me to process that before continuing. I met Alice on an online forum. From the start, she fascinated me. She talked about how the world was corrupted and poisoned by humanity, and her ideas for rebirth and restoration. She had plans, Jonathan. So many plans. Everything you see here is a result of her work. We met up at some point and got along well. She was perfect. She was brilliant, and she was mine. So, why did you kill her? I asked. I could see his eyes clouding over as if he was about to cry. Her anesthetic didn't work as expected. Instead of removing pain, it amplified it. The way it actually functions is beyond me, but even a small dose causes the most unimaginable agony. It feels like your body is being stripped away from the inside and replaced with fire, atom by atom. Death would be preferable. But that's the thing. The anesthetic has one little side effect. It is absolutely impossible to die once its effects begin. You just have to endure the pain. So all the people I saw, I left my question unfinished. It's easy to manipulate someone's body when they don't have the strength to retaliate nor the ability to die. He paused, his body trembling with each shaky breath. Alice wanted to be the first. She wanted to be the pioneer as the world transitioned into her vision. I begged her not to do it, as there were far more suitable candidates, but she insisted, and so we staged a kidnapping. There was no evidence because there was no struggle, there was nothing. She came to this farm and was the first person to be operated on at that table. I spent years sticking toothpicks into her skin while she was drugged under her special anesthetic. She endured the pain and kept talking to me, sharing ideas I never would have imagined possible. She told me to find others, in places of power, and if they didn't join voluntarily, then find a way to force them. In time, they'd realize we were working for the benefit of humanity. She told me to start creating human-animal hybrids, an evolution of our species. And the last thing she told me, before I laid her to rest in a park, was to find you, to recruit you, to change your vision. And here you are. I fell silent. I didn't know what to say. Everything I thought I knew about my sister had been destroyed in an instant. I mean, it was possible the man was lying. There was no way she was actually some kind of insane fanatic, determined to torture people. That simply wasn't the person I knew. And yet, everything made sense. I didn't want to believe him, but I saw no way not to. He was right, and I knew it. The man looked at me. Come, Jonathan. There's one more thing you need to see. He led me upstairs, out of the basement and through the back door. He took me past a large garden and rows upon rows of stalls, most of them unoccupied. They were expecting many more. I followed him past a fire pit with logs turned upright in a circle around it, all the way to the large barn behind the farm. It was painted classic red, with a sloped roof and white barn doors. I could hear several noises emanating from inside loud, different sounds, groaning and scratching, almost as if a massive machine were in there, or a massive number of people. This, the man said, gesturing to the barn, is my greatest achievement, the work of my life. It is the beginning of Alice's vision for the world. This is where your initiation will take place, and you will become a full-fledged guardian. You will learn to be a bearer of justice and a pathmaker for the new world. He walked ahead of me and opened the massive doors, letting me take a look inside. It was dark and damp. "Welcome, Jonathan," he exclaimed. "To the human zoo?" I stepped inside. The smell hit me like a wave. It reeked of blood and rotting remains that hung in the air like a suffocating blanket. It made my stomach turn and my head spin as I tried to breathe in fresh air. It was useless. A surge of bile rose from my stomach into my throat. I turned to the side and vomited onto the ground. And judging by the mess there, I wasn't the first. Rows upon rows of cages lined the walls. In each cage, there seemed to be someone. And from the looks of it, most were already dead. Every cage was labeled with the name of a different creature. There was a worm which had all its limbs removed and seemed to have segmented body parts every few inches, forced to crawl using its head as an anchor. There were several dogs and cats, long needles inserted into their cheeks in place of whiskers, everything below their elbows and knees removed, forcing them to walk on all fours. Other human-animal hybrids had parts of their bodies elongated or exaggerated, turning them into various creatures. It didn't seem possible to look like that and still live. Every inhabitant of the human zoo was filthy and ragged, confined in tiny living spaces, and forced to eat small portions of what appeared to be rotten meat fit only for animals. As I passed, they looked at me with sad, pleading eyes. They wanted freedom, just like Thompson. They were broken and hurt, but they seemed resigned to the fact that they would live out the rest of their days here. There was no resistance left in any of them, no fight. They had all given up. This place was hell. It was hard to think clearly. The stench kept invading my brain, clouding my vision with black spots. My heart pounded in my chest, a result of the horrors before me. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. This was too much. The man kept walking ahead. This is where I keep all the current specimens before deciding to put them in captivity. And this is where you and all the other guardians will work, feeding the specimens, continuing their evolution, and cleaning their chambers. My blood boiled. He didn't care about the pain he inflicted. Nothing fazed him. You're treating people like animals. This is inhumane, I shouted at him. He looked at me with disappointment. Look at them. They are animals. It's all for the cause anyway. Later, they'll be happy to know they were the first steps in humanity's evolution. He led me forward until we reached a huge hole in the ground, in the middle of the barn. It was about 30 feet in diameter, and the bottom seemed to stretch down at least 15 feet or more. There didn't seem to be any way in or out. The man spoke. This is where all the guardians before you proved themselves worthy of guardian status. Your initiation begins now. I felt a hard shove against my back. The momentum carried my body over the edge of the hole, my feet following quickly. In an instant reflex, I covered my head with the elbow of my remaining arm and leaned forward, hoping to absorb the impact of the fall with my knees before rolling away. I hit the ground with a heavy thud, sending waves of pain through my body and leaving me sprawled face down on the floor. I lay there motionless. The breath was knocked out of my lungs and my knees felt like they had shattered. I lifted my head slightly to get a better look at where I was. A small, dusty pit in the middle of a barn where people came to die. Nothing special about it. There was movement at the edge of my vision. Something was circling me, walking with a light step and exaggerated motions as if struggling to maintain balance. Each step it took made a sharp clicking sound echo through the pit. Slowly, I forced myself up despite the pain. I turned my body to the side to get a better view, even under the dim light. The first thing that became clear was that the thing had no neck. Its head ended at its shoulders. The second thing was that it had no eyelids. It stared at me with large, unblinking eyes, absorbing my every movement. The third was the sharp steel claws extending from the tips of its fingers. Then it spread its wings. It opened its arms wide, revealing a patchwork of human flesh stitched together beneath them. It looked at me for a few moments, head tilted, arms raised in a display of aggression. Then it twisted its head, a full 180 degrees. I was staring at a human owl. The owl lunged forward, its claws aimed straight at my chest. I threw myself to the side, fearing for my life once again, just as I had for the past few days. I wasn't fast enough. Its claws tore through my clothes like butter, leaving 3 deep gashes across my chest. I ignored the pain and immediately turned to face the owl. Letting my guard down would mean death. The owl was still facing the inner wall of the pit. It twisted its head to look at me, its massive eyes filled with intense hatred. Panic surged through me as I jumped backward, trying to avoid another attack, but then I regained my senses. If I was going to survive, I knew I had to act immediately. The longer I hesitated, the weaker I would become, and the smaller my chances of making it out alive. I lunged at one of its wings, hoping to knock it down. It dodged me. In a lapse of judgment, I had forgotten that there was still a human underneath it all, desperate to avoid death just as much as I was. I rolled backward and jumped to my feet. The owl launched at me again, claws extended. My first instinct was to dodge once more, but I suppressed it. The owl would be expecting that. Instead, I waited until the last possible moment and threw myself at the charging owl. I caught it by surprise. The owl staggered back, stumbling under my weight. I dug my fingers into the small gap between its head and shoulders and began tearing at the stitches holding them together. The owl thrashed wildly, realizing what I was doing. It collapsed to the ground, trying to scratch at me from behind, but it couldn't reach me because of its wings. I kept ripping, one stitch after another. I could feel the tension loosening. Just a few more minutes of this and I would be free. The owl's movements started to slow, and it seemed to realize that the fight was lost. I tore out the final stitch, and the rest of the owl's head came off easily, dripping with blood. I dropped it to the ground and blacked out, exhausted. I woke up in one of the rooms. My chest ached horribly. I sat up in bed and pulled the covers away. 3 large scars ran across my chest, sore and tender to the touch but clearly treated by someone. I looked out a nearby window. It was the middle of the night. I couldn't hear any noise inside, so I assumed everyone was outside in a tent, sleeping. Everyone except the man. He was sitting in the chair, simply watching me sleep. Mind games. He looked at me as I sat up and raised an eyebrow. I started walking toward him despite the pain. He clasped his hands together. "Well done. You are now a guardian." I continued my slow approach. "You once asked me what my ultimate goal in all of this was. It's for everyone. You, me, all the people of the earth. Humanity is the greatest form of life. I am treating it as such. With my guidance and your help, humanity will enter a new era, a new evolution." I kept walking toward him. Everyone was outside. I was alone with him. "This was your sister's vision, and then it became mine. I look forward to seeing it become yours." He tensed slightly in his chair. "This isn't the only human zoo out there. We have spread our philosophy and we are many. But go ahead, kill me. Continue the cycle. You will follow in your sister's footsteps and lead the world to salvation." I didn't think twice. I grabbed a vase from the bedside table and rushed toward him, weapon raised. There was a flash of fear in his eyes. Clearly, he hadn't expected me to do this. He wasted precious seconds reaching for his key fob. I smashed the vase against his head. He pressed a button on the key fob. The electric shock surged through my entire body. The pain was far worse than anything I had experienced before. Every separate jolt made my body convulse against itself. I tried to fight through the pain and grab the button, but I couldn't move on my own, let alone think. Setting it to 10 kills you instantly. My vision turned into a searing white. I could feel my organs vibrating inside me. The pain was endless and relentless. That was how I died. The electricity fried my insides, turning them into liquid mush. Then it stopped. It took a moment for my vision to return, but even then, it was blurred and hazy. The man was still on the ground, breathing but unconscious. Pieces of the vase were embedded in his skull, sending thin streams of blood down his face. I pulled one out and slit his throat. It wasn't the death he deserved, considering everything he had done, but it was the one he got. I staggered out of the room to find Edison pouring what looked like gasoline onto the floor. I tensed, ready for another fight. He set the gas can down and raised his hands. "Hey man, you can relax. I'm the one who helped you out there. You'd be dead if it weren't for me." I studied his face and believed him. I lowered my fists. He continued. "I hated this place too, but I never found the right opportunity to fight back. What you did was really brave." "What are you doing?" I asked. "Burning this goddamn hellhole down," he simply said. We worked together for a few hours in silence and in the dark. He had nearly finished with the farmhouse, so we moved on to the barn and finished with the tents. We ended at Michael's car, and Edison handed me a lit match, signaling that he wanted me to do it. I didn't care anymore. Everything could burn. I tossed the match into a pool of gasoline and quickly ran off with Edison before the small fire erupted into a raging inferno. We were about 2 miles away when the night sky was lit up by a flash of white light. It was done. Edison turned to me. "So, where to now?" I glanced at the rearview mirror, watching the horizon consumed by flames. In the distance, I could hear the wail of fire trucks. Someone must have called them. I looked ahead at the gravel road before me, pondering the question. Home.